more on the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. We're joined by Dr Oscar Van Heerden in studio. He's with the Centre for African Diplomacy and Leadership at the University of Johannesburg. And then via Teams, we're joined by Willem Els from the Institute of Security Studies. Gentlemen, thank you to the both of you for joining us. Now, perhaps let's start with you, Willem, online. Then we'll bring it back to studio. Now, with what we've heard from the Commission today, or at least when speaking to General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, he had to answer this morning on the 121 dockets that were transferred to Pretoria. Beyond indicating that he didn't disband the task team after the dockets were taken, he also indicated that 5 dockets among those transferred had instructions to be actioned, which were the arrest of some suspects, which didn't happen. We saw and were reporting 2 weeks ago that immediately when the dockets returned to KwaZulu-Natal, suspects were arrested. What did you make of just that part of his testimony around seemingly there being no valid reason for the transfer of the files, if not to benefit the suspects whose arrests would have been delayed in that instance?
Good afternoon to you. Yeah, indeed. What we saw when he made his first allegations during the press briefing, he mentioned that. And today he came and he actually provided proof of what happened and the inaction of the investigations after it left KwaZulu-Natal and it was brought to Pretoria. And I think the evidence that he tabled today actually vindicates him and also provides proof that his allegations are true and that there's a case to be answered for. So he is really thorough in what he's doing. We see that he built on the foundation that he laid yesterday, and we believe that today is going to be still quite an interesting day.
Mm-hmm. Doctor, I'll pose the same question to you around the fate of those dockets. Seemingly, the fate was that they were just going to lie there in some storeroom, nothing happened. But it seems, as we've heard from the General, that there were instructions that should have been actioned, but there was no further movement on them. What did you make on just his testimony there?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I agree that it's quite suspect that those dockets were suddenly just pulled aside and left there. But at the same time, I think the argument that perhaps they are going to come with when they respond to these allegations is the minute that the unit was disbanded, it brought a halt to everything. Because then the question is, what do we now do with the outstanding dockets? How do we act on it?
But if there's instructions there, remember on 5 specific cases that they were at this level, this is what you need to action, because we heard that they were so meticulous that even in the handover, beyond them making copies for themselves, one would assume that they would have had the footnotes to say where we are with this case. But it sounds as though at least those who took stock of those dockets will have to speak for themselves, but it sounds as though they were probably locked in a room and nothing gone through them to see where exactly, at which stage of the investigation are some of these dockets.
Yeah, I think, you know, when you deal with the South African Police Service, it's a very hierarchical institution. The instruction was that the unit is shut down. And it came from the highest level, the minister. And I think what happens in those situations is everything stops. I do think that it is suspect that the 5 dockets found their way to others. There were instructions, but those were instructions that were there when the unit was still operating. And so by virtue of this letter now saying it's closed, it's done, I think that's, but I think Mkhwanazi is making a good point. That it is suspect, there were instructions, why were those not followed through?
And then, Willem, before we delve into Mkhwanazi's testimony on the Section 204 witness, I want to take you back to yesterday when Mkhwanazi detailed the efforts he made before the press conference in July to try and fight the disbandment of the political killings task team. We heard that he spoke to the National Commissioner. After that, he sent a text to the Minister of Police, then Senzo Mchunu, requesting his audience, with the Minister acknowledging that very text, but never following through with a meeting to him. And then he went beyond that to reach out to the Portfolio Committee Chair on Police, Ian Cameron, asking to be invited to make representations before Parliament. And he went on to state yesterday that, in fact, he had no business being part of such proceedings in Parliament, given that he was just a provincial commissioner. But just the great lengths at which he went to attempt to almost keep the political killings task team, what did you make of that?
Yeah, I think that was actually telling of the very person that he is and how he took it to heart based on the evidence and also his allegations. But I think the crux of what we have here is, and that is very, very, very important in terms of policing, was that the instruction of the disbandment of this political killing task team, was it a legal or an illegal instruction? Was it within the mandate of the minister to instruct it, or did he venture here on the operational field that is not part of his mandate in terms of Section 206 of the Constitution? So I think that is why he went into great depth to explain how he tried to counter that. And also, it's still not certain, based on the evidence coming out today also as well, was the task team actually disbanded on the ground level? He said that they still had to vote for or they had to work on a budget for it. The budget was reduced, and then the commission also asked, so what happened to the members? And he said that some of them went back. So there's still no clarity there. Was the commission or the task team actually disbanded, or did they continue with their work after they received the dockets? And we see that the arrests have been effected. So there's just still a grey area there.
It seems there, when it comes to the disbandment, he clarified, stating that they continued in as much as the team was reduced because of the budgetary constraints, Doctor. But essentially they continued, and that's why they were standing ready. When the 121 dockets got to them, they were able to effect the arrest because they had instructions on at least 5 cases. But then I want to take you back still to yesterday, because there were quite a few shocking revelations there that also need unpacking. He went on to make some sort of a link which draws Minister Mkhunu to a syndicate, stating that what happened, he believed that there was a syndicate that had wrong information, that perhaps the KwaZulu-Natal political killings task team was actually investigating syndicates in Gauteng, whereas all they had done was deployed a few members from KwaZulu-Natal to reinforce the Gauteng division. So the Gauteng division was consistently investigating the syndicates in Gauteng. But based on that incorrect information, he believes that then somehow they unduly influenced the minister, and Advocate Matlapi, whose leading evidence, then said it will then lie upon you, onus is upon you then to furnish us with the proof around this linkage, because you cannot just say you assume. And he confidently said, yes, I will. If anything, perhaps some of the evidence would have to be led in camera, but most certainly there is evidence that links these syndicates to the minister in the form of them being his associates. What did you make of just that bold statement when actually challenged that you'll have to present evidence if you're linking him to these syndicates, which you name are his associates?
Yeah, no, it's an astonishing statement, and he does claim to have the evidence. Of course, everyone is going to, as you know, Mfundo, there's 3 parts to the inquiry. The one is, of course, the General Mkhwanazi providing all the evidence that he's, and backing up the claims, the allegations that he's making. And you're right, he sounds very confident, because that is indeed the crux. If you are saying that there's a link between these syndicates and the link is with Minister Mkhunu, then of course there needs to be probably WhatsApp messages, emails, or some form of direct communication between the minister and these said individuals. So yeah, no, all eyes on Mkhwanazi as to whether he's going to be able to provide the evidence. Perhaps also just to add to the previous point, it's true, he has gone to great lengths to try and deal with this sudden announcement, this letter. But I'm almost certain that the minister's office and others, when it's their turn, are going to argue that he went way out of his jurisdiction in terms of wanting to counter. Because if he had a problem with the instruction which came from the minister, I'm sure there are very set interactions and rules to follow. And in one, it's not about phoning the National Commission on vacation and then the portfolio committee. It's quite extraordinary.
They might want to almost pin him down to processes and there being hierarchy, of course, because we do believe, I'm sure, that there are already attorneys on watching briefs there that will counter most of what he has stated now. But Willem, to bring it back to you, we also heard about the Section 204 witnesses and the challenges thereof when they turn against the state. We heard from General Mkhwanazi indicating that at times there are perhaps, let's say, 2 scenarios where it's either inordinate delays in just processing that case, which leads to a situation where the main suspects in the case can reach out to the witness, perhaps offer him something, and then he turns against the state, or at times where you would have an individual being intimidated. Your views on just the delays that we're constantly seeing, because we keep on hearing that when you have justice delayed, it is essentially justice denied.
Of course, you know, and I can see where he's heading to there, because in practice, you know, there are delays when it comes to court cases and so on. But if there are too many and you look at the circumstances, then it should be questioned. But also, one of the things that he mentioned there, and that is very true, is the more opportunity you provide for these criminal syndicates to actually zero in on your witnesses, your Section 204 witnesses, the more they will start to intimidate and try or attempt to scare off the witnesses, or in some instances, some of the witnesses are also being killed in some cases. So that actually makes it pokes a hole in your prosecution. It also weakens your prosecution in terms of the intimidation of these witnesses, that at the end of the day, when they provided you with their statements and now they have to come and back it up in court, they are sometimes unwilling to do so, or they just withdraw those statements.
Mm-hmm. Now that you touch on prosecutions, it was their turn now today to also be somewhat drawn into this whole big scandal, where he intimated to some sort of collusive conduct between the prosecution and some of the suspects. He spoke about cases that were withdrawn for him with very flimsy reasons. But I want us to touch on that and get your take and just go through some of what was stated in the table as reasons for withdrawal of cases which clearly would have disheartened them as a team having investigated. But I want us to quickly go to an ad break and then